Hello everyone, my name is Javier Gomez, member of the UDS technical team, and in this video we're going to see how to deploy Windows applications to our phone users. To do this process, what are we going to need? An RDS server, of course. This RDS server has been already configured and installed in a previous video, so if you need it, please check it out. And of course, we can't forget about our new and fresh deployment of UDS 3.5. Now let's enter our UDS server with its IP. Let's enter with an administrator user or the super user if you need it. In my case, it's going to be the super user. Great. Now let's go to the dashboard and start checking all the tech that we're going to need to complete this process. The first thing will be our service provider, our RDS platform provider. You can see, let's give it an easy name, RDS server in my case, and here in the list of servers we will add the IP or the IPs of our RDS servers. In my case we only have one, so easy, one IP, .60, great. And there it is. And let's have a user mapping. We will leave it by default, but in the case that we won't need to use it, just a bit of explanation. What the one you could do with this tab will be when you access UDS and access a user service, UDS will be access that with an RDS server with an specific user, and you can see this list of users, and all those users will have the same password as you can see here. In this case, we will not use this function. Of course, the second one will be the ID user management. Here, what you can do is have the option that when UDS is going to connect with the AD and a user that's not inside AD can access, you give the permission to create that user in the AD with the, of course, any prefix that you want, you can change it here. In this case, our authentication is going to be with an RD user already created. We won't need to touch any of these tabs for now, so we can leave them by default for now. Let's click on test to see if we can connect, and great, so we can save. Once this provider is completed, let's create some base services inside, and with this case we're going to create two applications, LibreOffice and a GIMP. Let's create a new one, LibreOffice name, okay, right is going to be in this case the path of the application that I have right here saved. Copy and paste. Of course, this is my case. You can have it maybe start in another path, no problem, just copy it and paste it here in the path tab. The application parameters and start path, in this case we don't need to change anything, we can leave it by default. And in max allowed services, you can have any number that you need. In the case that you only have or want 5 users to access, you can put 5, or of course you can put a number 0, that will be unlimited, any number that you want. Now let's do the same with GIMP, same process. Let's give it an easy name, a path, and everything else we can leave it by default. Let's click on save. Great. Now that we have our service provider and our base services configured, let's go to the Authenticator. We are going to create a new AD Authenticator. Let's give it an easy name, AD. The label, we're going to need it also sometimes. And of course the main IP of our server, an AD server. In our case, as you can see, it's the same one as the RDS server. In the credentials tab, we will have to give a user with administrator privileges or the sufficient privileges so that it can create users when needed. In this case, as you can see, we're using the administrator. and of course the password. Great. The avatars we can leave it by default. Display we can leave it by default too. Let's click on test. Test passed, so we can continue. Now that we have our authenticator created, let's get started with the groups and the creation of them. If the connection is correct, you can see already the groups that you have in your AD. In my case, going to be the group UDS. Of course, it was already created and configured in the AD server. You don't need to add the users, as when they access for the first time, they will be completed in the list automatically. Next step will be the OS manager. In this case, we are going to need the RDS OS manager, as this is for applications. Let's give it an easy name. And the accessing time 24. It's by default, it's 24 hours. And you need anything different, just change it as you like. Let's go inside and let's get with the connectivity. We are going to create 2 transports. Of course, you can create any number that you like. Let's create 2 for now for the test. 1 direct transport and 1 tunnelized with the HTML5 connection protocol. The first one, RDS for apps, direct one, same as always. Let's give it a new name. The priority that we're going to need, in this case, I'll leave it with 1. Network things, we can leave them by default. The credentials, we can leave it by default that we're going to use 80 users. Don't need to touch that. The parameters tab, you can activate any parameter that you are going to need, but by default for this test, I'm same with the display tab. Of course, Linux client by default, and the advanced tab the same, we can leave it by default. Let's click on save. Now let's go with the tunnelized connection, HTML5 for apps. As always with UDS, let's start with an easy name. The priority, in this case, let's give it a different one. Let's give it a 2. And a list of transports, the direct transport that has a 1 priority will go first, and the second one will be the tunnelized connection. The tunnel tab, of course, we are going to need the IP of our UDS tunneler. In this case, the IP of our machine, and can't forget to put the port, in this case 10.443, the default port. Credential file, you can leave it by default. And parameters, if you need anything, you can check it, there's no problems. Other tabs, we can leave them for now by default. Now that we have the transports created, let's go to create a new service pool. Important so that the users can see what they have to access. Let's give it a name. The base service, of course, and the OS manager that we have already created before. The display, you can change the images if you need. On the advanced tab, we can leave it by default. And the availability tab, as we are using applications, this tab won't need to be edited. Now, once created, let's add to it the new transports and the groups. Our direct one and HTML5 connection, and of course the groups that will be allowed to see this, the UDS group. And the second service that we need to create will be the same steps as before. Let's go with GIMP, RDS OS manager. Display tab, we can leave it by default. Same with the advanced, and the ability tab that we're using apps, we don't need it, and that will be it. Let's save. Let's get inside the service, and as before, let's add the 2 transports that we have created, or any ones that you have created, of course. The groups, the UDS server, UDS group, and we are ready. Once the 2 services are created, let's get back. Let's go back to our main page and let's access with an AD user. In my case, of course, use the ID Authenticator. Always you could use the label and put it at the top in your URL, and you will directly access to the AD Authenticator when logged in. Let's use the user 01 that we have already created in the AD and with its password. Let's get inside, and as you can see, he sees both services that we have created with both of the transports that we have created. As you remember, with the priority, the direct transport will appear at the top, and the second one will be our HTML5 connection will be the second one. Now let's do a little check if what we've done is correct. Let's connect to one, or again with a direct connection. Of course, going to your UDS client, and remember that you need to have the UDS client installed. It will open the client automatically, and it's entering the AD, and it's opening our GIMP very fast. Here it is. Here we have our GIMP application. Now let's do the same with LibreOffice, and in this case let's use the HTML5 connection protocol with our tunneler. As you can see, it opens in a new tab, and we will have our LibreOffice ready to use and type and everything that you need. Very fast and very easy process. So this is everything for now. Hope this can help you a lot. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day. Bye.